Hi there, and welcome to another edition of the 1% Better podcast with your host, Rob O'Donoghue.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the show of the 1% variety. This one is a really good one, and I am biased, so I'll always say that, but I'm looking forward to putting it out. I hope you enjoy it. Just a few quick ones. The episode with Johnny Holland that we released last Friday has been getting really good feedback. I say that as well a lot, but generally it has, and I'm kind of surprised that I normally get good feedback for these episodes. People probably just don't take the time to give me negative feedback, but I'm open to it. Anyway, the episode with Johnny was very well received. He came across as a very genuine and honest guy, which he seems to be for sure, and it gave out a lot of good practical tips and advice around food, nutrition and wellness, which I hope some of you are applying in your cooking habits and in your daily routines. Which kind of brings me to the point of, I'd love to get a good insight of how much of the tips that you're taking on board you're actually putting into practice. All this stuff takes discipline, as I often talk about. Forming habits takes numbers of weeks. Some say 21 days, some say longer. It depends. I think everybody's a little bit different. But for me, when I listen to podcasts, unless I actually take notes or write something down shortly afterwards, when something resonates with me thinking, that's brilliant, I need to use that, I forget about it and rarely go back. But when I do, I certainly go back with a very much focused mindset of taking notes, writing down what I'm going to do and start practicing it. And again, of course, you probably pick up 10% or less, maybe 1% of these sort of things over time, and they do have an impact. So I guess my question is, how many of you are actually doing that for this podcast or for any podcast? Which things work best for you? How do you do it? Moving from passive listening to active listening is difficult. That's why I'm putting this show together, to see if folks can actually improve and do that. So I'd love to hear if that's working out well for you. Another quick reminder, Patreon page. So as I said in the introduction episode, which you mightn't have heard if you didn't go back and check it out, I'm putting content behind the Patreon page for those that sign up to it to become a member. There's a solo podcast there around core values, which I'm very passionate about. I do a lot of that work in coaching. Check it out. It's of value to you, I would hope, or of worth. And I talk about the etymology of values there. It's an opportunity for you to donate if you value what I'm doing and if it's something of worth to you. Okay, one of the other things I mentioned a few weeks back when I did the intro show was around doing a live podcast or a live stream through YouTube, through Facebook, and advance this a little bit. So if you listen to season 1, episode 14 was with a lady called Healthy Star. I'll send a link in the show notes for you to click on to check back on that episode. So Healthy is a clairaudient and a shaman. Now, don't get put off by the idea of being a shaman, but she does psychic readings and life coaching that is. And it was a really great episode. We stayed in touch, and I had reached out to her recently to see if she'd be interested in coming on to do that kind of concept show of having maybe 2 or 3 callers dial in that would like to get a psychic reading done, and we'll record it and put it out. And she's agreed. So I think technically it's probably something I just need to figure out, but I think it's very doable, and she's on board. So what I'm putting out now is an ask to see if anyone would like to come onto the show, whether I do it actually live or record it live and put it out afterwards, still to figure that one out. But if you'd like a reading, come on. We'll obviously get your approval that we can put it out. And Healthy has agreed to do a few of these in a one-off episode. So something different, something a little bit fun. Does it fall under 1% better banner? Probably. Hopefully the person coming on goes away more than 1% better. I'd like to give it a shot. So, as I said, if you want to get in touch, drop me an email. It's on the site. And if you're willing to do that, let's have some fun and see how it goes. So, on to this week's episode. It's with Emma O'Toole. So Emma runs her own successful yoga business in Dublin named cunningly Yoga with Emma, yogawithemma.ie, links in the show notes as well there. And she's been growing this practice over the last 7 or 8 years. While the conversation talks a lot about yoga towards the end, around the practice, postures and things you can do to get some benefit from practicing yoga, the core of the conversation really is around the type 1 diabetes disease, or is it a condition? And we go into a little bit of detail around that. Emma has this for over 28 years. She was diagnosed very young in life in secondary school. And as some of you might know, it is a very serious life-threatening condition if not managed properly. Management has got better over the last number of years, but still can be a killer if it's not looked after. I'm saying that because I know, because I'm one as well. I got diagnosed in my mid-30s and have been managing it quite well since. Emma's story is much more broad and deep because she's had it for nearly 30 years. And we go into lots of detail around that. The reason I'm doing it is to raise a bit of awareness, to let people know a little bit more about type 1 versus type 2. I'm sure most people know somebody that has type 1, probably know people that definitely have type 2, but it's just to give a little bit more insight into the condition, that it's one that can be managed, that you can look after it, but it takes discipline, it takes focus. Like a lot of the things I talk about on the show, you do need a little bit of discipline, certainly for this. But Emma's a great advocate of wellness, health, and managing type 1 diabetes tightly, which she has done for so long, and a really good story that she has shared on this podcast that I'm really excited about sharing with you. I'm very happy with the way it turned out, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. So, before I just leave you there, if you're a first-time listener, maybe somebody that has worked with Emma, gone to her classes, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy the show. Please do follow us on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook. Sign up for the newsletter on the website. Even better, subscribe on iTunes, and even better again, tell somebody about it. Get them on board and have 50 plus episodes to listen to from the catalogue of season 1, which will be great. Hang around till the end of the show. There's some call outs there that might be of interest. The show notes will be in the episode link with links to Emma's website to contact her. And yeah, that's me rambling. God, that's a long intro. Hopefully it was of interest to you. I shall stop talking now and hand you over to the conversation with Emma O'Toole. Enjoy. I'm delighted to introduce today Emma O'Toole, otherwise known as Yoga with Emma. Would that be another moniker for you?
It's another guise. Yes, it is. Yes.
And it's a nice little ring to it as well. So thanks for coming on to the show. So I'll give folks a little bit of background on just how we got connected. When I interviewed / conversed with the tweeting goddess Samantha Kelly last year, God, I think it was October time frame, and she brought up the topic of type 1 diabetes. Her daughter has type 1, and it was actually the first time on the 40 or 5 episodes at that stage that it actually came up, and I kind of mentioned also that I was one. It wasn't something I was hiding from the world per se. It was just hadn't come up in conversation at all. And we got talking about that, and I was thinking, like, yeah, this is something I think we probably should talk a little bit more about, because I think one, there's probably lack of awareness for people that don't have it, really what it's about, and two, for those maybe that do have it, they sometimes may have almost attached a stigma to it, or don't want to talk about it, or, you know, potentially could get lots of good learnings or insights from people that have it and are healthy and strong and, you know, fighting through it. All that said, she Samantha mentioned you, and then we connected, and now we're here. So that's how this all came about. And again, thanks, Emma, for coming on.
Pleasure.
So maybe just let's get into that whole area of type 1. What's your type 1 story? When did you get diagnosed? Where did it all begin? I'd love to hear about that.
It was April of 1990. So it's nearly 30 years now I have it.
Wow.
And it was, I started in secondary school in that September, and then it was coming up to Easter and I wasn't feeling particularly well. I had this constant thirst.
Right.
And back then it was, you know, nobody really kind of understood what the symptoms were, or how to kind of, that's diabetes because you have this constant thirst and you can't get rid of it. You know, doctors are kind of over-analyzing it at the time.
Right.
So I had this constant thirst, and between each class, I was trying to feed this thirst that I could not quench. And because I was in first year, we did all subjects. So I was in doing home economics. and we were baking cakes, and I was craving sugar. I just kept eating sugar all the time, and I lost a lot of weight in a short space of time. So Easter came, it was early April in 1990, and the Easter Monday, there's a picture of me in my mum's house, and we had a Black Forest gatto. And I looked dreadful at the time, and I had a fork in my hand ready to dig into the Black Forest gatto. And it was after that I felt very, very ill,
right,
for a week. So this would probably be the worst case scenario for many diabetics, that if they notice any symptoms. So this doesn't happen to everyone. This is part of my story,
right? Just
to get that very clear. I just lost all energy. I couldn't keep anything down. Everything was just kind of flowing each which way.
Right.
So not to get too graphic.
We leave that one there anyway. Yeah.
We'll park that one there.
Yeah.
So the doctor just said, look, you'll have to bring her to A&E. So I was bundled, literally, because I had no energy. I couldn't stand. I was bundled into the back of a car and brought to A&E. And they said that I had a different diagnosis and sent me back home.
Wow.
And then the next day, I fell into I went into DKA, which is a diabetic ketoacidosis coma. So
right.
My sugar level was up. I think there's a record here.
Wow.
I'm not going to.
So this was super high sugar levels you were on.
My sugar level was 87.5. Now the ranges are usually between 5 and 8. Mine was 87.
Wow.
So it was practically radioactive.
Jesus.
Or it was just the smell of acetone.
And
I was in a coma for 3 days.
Wow! Like, so was that a controlled coma you were in, or was it?
No.
Oh,
no,
okay.
That was a diabetic coma, because my sugar level was so high.
Yeah.
They gave me IV insulin. They gave me 4 IV insulins, and they gave me 6 hours in order to get my sugar level down from 87 to 42, to see how my body would react to the absorption of insulin, because I was deprived of it.
Yeah.
Now, thankfully, that happened, and I came out of it, and I was in ICU, and that's when my whole life completely changed. This new lifestyle of mine, which I still lead today, is that I'm diabetic.
Wow. That's amazing that even in 1990 that they weren't probably able to connect the dots there of what was happening with the thirst and give you a different diagnosis.
Yeah.
And that's not, it's 28 years ago. It's still not that long ago. That's mad. The numbers are staggering there. Again, for people, as you said, that don't know what the kind of glucose sugar levels should be between 4 and 7, I think it's what I was told when I got diagnosed.
Yeah, there's a different range.
Yeah.
Usually between 4 and 8 or 4 and 7,
Yeah.
It does range. It's not an exact science.
Sure.
Oh, so this person who is sitting at the desk and just sitting at the computer, their sugar level, their range might be between 6 and 8 if they have tight control. But another person that could be more active, their sugar level, their ranges might be different. So it's not set in stone. Oh, this is exactly what it should be.
Oh no! What I was even trying to get to there is because I only got diagnosed when I was 35, so I was one of these type 1s that are seemingly more and more common now. This kind of, because type 1 is typically called juvenile diabetes, but now there's kind of late onset or whatever. And I think I was getting blood tests done for a couple of years, and it was showing kind of high, but not abnormal, and that whole HbA1c. Was that even a thing back in the day, back then, the whole HbA1c?
It was, yes. It was just because the diagnosis wasn't exact. And this is another thing, is because everybody's different. You had the textbook is you're constantly passing water, you're constantly drinking water, you have a thirst that you can't quench, you're losing weight quite a lot, you're craving sugar all the time, they're the textbook diagnosis. Lack of energy, just no kind of drive to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always other kind of symptoms that would kind of leak in from other diagnoses, and that's where the lines got a little bit blurred. They couldn't say, oh, is it diabetes or is it something else? So they couldn't give me a clear diagnosis as to what it was until they actually checked my blood sugar level, which is they didn't, it was just something that they just didn't do because they just didn't know.
Right.
And then they asked the very important question, is there a family history of diabetes?
Yes.
And as soon as my dad said, yes, there is. And then they went, there you go. So that's when the penny fell. The
penny fell there. Yeah, because I think when you said 87 there, I was thinking, is that a different scale? Because my highest ever reading when I went in, it was funny because when they diagnosed me that day, and we'll get on to you of talking maybe denial, I was like, nah, that couldn't be. I'm running half marathons. I'm fine. Like, this whole rejection of it. And they said, well, look, just go home tonight and eat as you normally eat, but just check your bloods before and after. And I was like, yeah, grand, I'll do that. Checked beforehand and I was maybe 8 or something like that. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. And then I had what I would normally have eaten. And I would have been healthy enough, but not maybe as aware of carbs. And I ate my dinner. And then 2 hours later, I checked and I was like 22. And I was like, okay, that's probably not a good sign. So it started to sink in then. But I think even since then, and, when I've ever had the sense of I need to check my bloods, and I was super high. The highest probably was in the late 20s, so you'd certainly have a record there. I must do some Googling to see if that can be bet, 87 or so.
I really don't know. I haven't done any kind of research on it. I'd be frightened if I see anyone else.
God.
That was in minimal. That is in the European minimal scale.
Yeah.
I know in the American scale they do it. They measured it slightly different. So there you'll probably get into the thousands if it's way level to the one that I had.
Sure.
So I can't remember how they measure it.
Okay.
But yeah, that's what I was.
So that was,
and it's lucky as well, because even though the timeline of my diagnosis, there was no damage. When I woke up, I couldn't talk. They thought, oh gosh, I'm going to have to learn again how to talk, how to speak, how to do all that kind of stuff. Luckily, I didn't need to do that.
Okay.
So I didn't have any organ damage. The brain still works, although questionable at some times. And yeah, I'm in full fettle. I'm working.
Brilliant. Yeah. So like,
well,
that was, you were lucky, I suppose, coming out of that. But then the realization came in as just a teenager at that stage. This is the whole kind of life sentence that I have now, that I have to manage it. How did you deal with that in those early stages and develop over time around the diagnosis?
I went into denial as well. I don't want to do this. Why am I different to everyone else? Why do I have to and where I was doing my blood testing on my fingers were just in tatters. I would inject into my leg, my thighs. And my thighs were just so tender and so sore that I actually couldn't find any new spots.
Wow.
I could use my stomach because I was just in so much pain and my skin was so tender that I was in tears every time I would have to take my injection or have to take my blood. Again, it was probably just the psychology of what happened to me when I was diagnosed, that I don't want that to happen again. So I have to eat all the time, and everything was set. I had to eat my breakfast at 8 o'clock. I had to eat at 11 o'clock. I had to eat at 1 o'clock. I had to eat at 4 o'clock. I had to eat at 6. And that was my day. It was structured. It was set. And there was no movement for me. So even if I went out with my friends or went to, go to meet a McDonald's or something like that, I couldn't eat because it wasn't within those time frames. And I found that really, really hard. So technology now in the research in insulin and diabetes is worlds apart from what it was back in the 90s and the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So we have much more freedom now, and it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
That it's come on that far.
Back then, how did you, now when you're pricking your finger and you can get that instant digital reading of where it's at, was that something you still had with that technology even there around then, or was it more kind of guesswork, or how did you even get the reading?
It was something similar. Like the machine that I had, you had to wait and you had to use you had to get an awful lot of liquid to get onto the strip to try and get the machine to register it. So sometimes you'd have to do it once or twice to get a good average. Or a near estimate as to what your blood sugar was at that point. And And then as soon as it registered the blood within the strip, you'd have to wait about 30 seconds for it to try and give you that reading. Right. And even with that reading, kind of going, right, I'll register, I'll do it again just to see.
Right.
Now, the technology is you don't need to use as much liquid for the strips, and the reading comes up immediately. If you're a little bit kind of dubious, but then that kind of trepidation, or that kind of, I'm not sure about that, do it again. There's no harm in that. Maybe that was just, just set in my head that I do it twice. But normally I wouldn't do it twice. I'd just do it once, because I trust technology now than I did back then.
Okay, yeah, no, it's definitely, even in the last few years since I've got it, it's obviously come on, and there's a new kind of patch you can wear for the 2 weeks where you have the constant reading that you can just scan over.
Oh, is that the Libra one? Yeah.
The Libra, yeah. I tried that.
There's a little bit of controversy about that, which I won't go into at the minute.
Okay.
So the Libra is, you can put that on your arm, or you can put that anywhere that's easy contactable. So you put the machine, and that gives you, as you know, Rob, it gives you the reading of what the trajectory of what your sugar level is. Is it going up or is it going down? And how you can treat that, forecast. Right. Okay. So that's right. My sugar level's on the way up. So I'll either take a correction, or I'll just leave it as is. I might go for a walk or go for a run or whatever. Or you can see the trajectory is on the way down. I'll eat, just to see that it stops me from going into a hypo.
Yeah, exactly.
It's quite clever. It's very, very clever.
It is clever, and I've used it. I got a trial of it during late last year, and because I do a lot of running and I'd be out on the roads a good bit, or cycling, I find it very useful for that. So you can actually just scan the reader across the patch, and it gives you that almost real time result, which prevents you from stopping and having to prick your fingers and whatnot. Yeah. But obviously it's moving forward. Yeah,
it'll work with some and work with others. In what I do at the moment, it won't work for me, and I'm not being a traditionalist. What the system that I have is working. It's not that. It's because it's the same. I don't need to use an insulin pump, because in yoga you're constantly moving. You're in these kind of nearly contortionistic poses, and if you have a machine on your hip,
sure,
it restricts you. So I do an awful lot of handstands or supported headstands. So where the monitor is on your upper arm, that puts a little bit more pressure on your arm, and that then, again, for alignment and getting into the yogic part, that kind of knocks you out slightly. For me, that's just from my point of view. People can correct me. That's not. I do know a yoga teacher that does use it, and she doesn't find any problem with it. It does impede her in a tiny way, but it just wouldn't fit for me.
Oh yeah, no, it is, I suppose, a preference thing, and if you were managing your controls well enough anyway, maybe it might be more for people that might need that more real-time constant checking as well. So once you kind of got diagnosed and you came to terms with it, you were coming maybe towards the end of your teens, going into the kind of whole going out stages, where when I look back, I was lucky, quote unquote, to not have got it till mid-30s, when maybe I had my heavy socialising, heavy Irish boozing out of the way, and it didn't affect my lifestyle as much. Was it something that held you back, or was there almost a stigma around it even when you were growing up then?
No, I did. No, I incorporated, every day, there's no such thing as normal. My normal is different to your normal. So I just say the usual routine. So everyone's day is completely different. So if I wake up in the morning and I check my blood, I take my insulin, I eat and all that kind of stuff, where somebody else would just walk up, have a shower, clean their teeth, have their breakfast, go to work. That's theirs. Yep. So I just add something down. You would do the same. But I wouldn't hide the fact that I was diabetic. I would let people know. I didn't necessarily have to tell them, look, if I talk a bit weird, my sugar level's going a bit low. I'm grand. I'll look after it. Yeah. I'd kind of make a bit of a joke about it. Like when I was working in an office, if somebody new sat beside me, and I just kind of come up to them quite quietly and say, "You're not squeamish or anything," and they go, "No, why?" I said, "All right, no, that's fine." Yeah. And they have this kind of quizzical look on their face. Go, "Why would you ask me a question like that?" I said, "Look, I'm type 1 diabetic. I'll take my blood, every now and again. It's not, you won't notice anything, but I have to be very aware of people's sensitivities.
Sure.
Because some people kind of go, oh God, no, I don't know how you do that. But if I was in my teens, I would always leave. If I had to eat, I had to walk away from people because I had the syringes at the time, and there was a huge stigmatism. Once you see those kind of orange caps, you go, oh, she's a junkie, or this, and that's because it was rampant back then. So I didn't want that stigmatism. So I would move away. I would either go to the bathroom or just kind of go into a closed room, or sometimes I even went into my car to do my injection, and then rejoined and said, look, I'll disappear for a minute, I'll be back in a second. I don't even have to tell them anything. But, some people might not know, some people do know. Oh, she's diabetic, she'll be back in a second. And the conversation would still flow. So there might be a little bit of a disruption, but other than that, no. Nowadays, and again, this is from my own personal view, I've never had any kind of comments made from people from the public. I know other people have. I would do my blood tests in a restaurant. Again, quite discreetly. I would keep kind of everything underneath the table. I'll have the machine on the table. Just do it very discreetly, and it's gone. It's literally done in seconds, and I put it away.
Yeah.
Now that we have, I have an insulin pen. So the insulin cartridge is in the pen. It looks like a normal pen, but when you take off the lid, you have the nib. I just dial up, inject it into my stomach. That's it. I don't, I don't do it through close. I do actually lift up just the lower part of my top, inject, and that's it. Yeah. And nobody's any the wiser.
Sure.
And it's this kind of anxiety, which, people are looking at me. People think I'm going to be a junkie. That's that's other people's judgments that you're trying to absorb, which isn't happening. And that raises your sugar level, because adrenaline, which I'll get onto a little bit later, that doesn't help your sugar levels. So I don't care what people say. People are doing their own thing. They're busy with their own lives. I have to do this. Yeah. If they catch me doing it, that's fine. If they make a comment, that's absolutely fine. I can happily explain. Yeah. But it's never got to the point that it has come to somebody saying, how dare you do this in public? Where I know some people that has happened, and it's quite unfair. So I've been lucky that way.
Right. Yeah, no, it's never happened to me, and I kind of got so almost comfortable with doing it. You just do it in a restaurant, as you said yourself, and you would almost forget that anyone could take a strange view on it. But I suppose if you were kind of sitting from somebody else's perspective, and maybe they're older, don't understand, you're sitting and seeing this person just jab something into their stomach that looks like they're taking some drugs. But no, it's just interesting. Some people I've talked to never mentioned to me that they were a type 1 until I came to the restaurant one night and put the pen on the table, and they said, are you a type 1? I said, yeah. Oh, so am I for the last 20 years. And I was like, why don't you talk? Or, why? Nothing to be ashamed of, not your fault. Yeah. You didn't do anything wrong, sort of thing,
And it's lovely to have that comfort. I was in London, and I was doing a course in London, and the instructor there, she just had, and it's exactly the same machine as mine, the AccuCheck Expert. Hers was just splayed out on the counter, and went, oh, I have that machine. Are you type 1 diabetic? She goes, yes. And the conversation then flowed. Yeah. But we were so engrossed in our own conversation that we forgot about everyone else. But it's nice that you can actually connect with people. Yeah. And just as we're connecting right now, because we can relate to this kind of different way of how our days run, that we have this condition. And I don't like calling it a disease. It just doesn't sound right. I always called it a condition, because we didn't contract it. It was just that what our bodies had, this hereditary gene, and then something just triggered, and now we have it. And it is just that simple for type 1. Yeah. It's very different for type 2, but it's just we were actually born with this, it's another word I don't like, defect, this kind of difference.
Predisposition to it, really.
Predisposition is difference. Yeah. And something very similar. I just got a cold, or you can get a flu, and so, and then your body just changes, and that can happen to for any kind of autoimmune condition.
Yeah. So absolutely. So no. No, it's great to hear that insight as well, and I suppose we can keep touching on it as we keep going through the story a little bit. I would say, for me, I suppose resilience or being able to bounce back is something that's quite close to me, a value, I guess. I presume it's something for you that you took this on board and didn't let it get you down and you kind of bounced back. Would that be fair to say?
Very much. Because, again, I would always go back to the very beginning of how this all started for me. So it was like this condition consumed me. It literally did consume. It just literally took over my body. So the mindset that I have now, and it still stands to this day, and this is how my diabetes is controlled, and I have very tight control, and have done for the last nearly 30 years,
right, that
I control it. It does not control me.
Okay. And talk to me about how you control it, and what, like, again, for people that don't understand, you probably have to inject 4 times a day, and you check your bloods maybe 8 times a day. You can obviously talk about, but as I kind of think about it and listen to you, as yoga comes into the picture, or as fitness and wellness comes into the picture, sometimes I say, well, if I joke that diabetes is the best and most strictest diet I could ever go on, because I don't have the choice, and my other choice is not to go on it and potentially die. So it's just right, I have to actually put some structure around this, and in a way I think I don't know if it's a good thing, but it certainly has given me a lot more structure and appreciation for what you have as well. How has maybe diabetes led you to yoga, to fitness, to wellness, to better diets? Maybe talk through that, how it all came together.
Well, when I was younger, I couldn't do PE because of my sugar levels were just everywhere. And when you're younger, your sugar levels are very hard to regulate because of hormone changes, your body changes, you're growing, your exams, all that kind of stuff. So, so I did gain a lot of weight because everything was carbs. You have to 10 grams of carbohydrate, and you have to take a unit of insulin, 10 grams of carbohydrate. So we didn't have ratios back then. And because the fear, if I played basketball, if I played volleyball, if I ran, if I did anything, my sugar level would fall. Yeah. And it did happen. And not that the teacher said, look, Emma, you stay in the sideline because of your diabetes. That wasn't the case. I said, look, I don't feel right. And it wasn't just because of my diabetes. It was more of a fear that my diabetes was holding me back. But then when I left school and I did my leaving cert and I did my accountancy courses, that sedentary life just didn't sit with me. I said, I have to do something. I can't live like this. I have to move. I have to do something. Yeah. So I joined the gym. To cut a very long story short, hated it. I wanted to do something that I can do by myself, that I can do at home. If I wanted to go to this class, I would go. So I searched for a yoga. I just had yoga. I just thought yoga was just stretching. That could be easy. It'd be great. Oh gosh, was I wrong? Right? So yoga is not just stretching. It is working every part of your body. And I knew that if diabetes is going to affect every part of my body, I have to mind every part of my body. And that's how yoga came in for me, because it made me very aware of my skeleton. It made me very aware of the muscles. It made me very aware of the organs that are surrounding the muscles, and how I've just become very aware, because I had to be very aware. If my sugar level was going to increase, I felt it, I was getting an infection. So how do I do that? So I wanted to nip it in the bud now before the cold or the flu or whatever would hit. And yoga makes you very aware of what's happening. So if you have a pain in your arm or your pain in your shoulder, you're going to go, oh, I have a pain in my shoulder because I slept awkwardly, or I have a pain in my shoulder because I don't know how it happened. Where now I understand, well, what did I do beforehand? You have to kind of think back, oh, I was lifting things awkwardly, or there's a pain in my lower back because I bent down to the dishwasher and and it hurt. How did that happen? So I have to kind of takes it, work backwards as to what the outcome is. So I have a sore back, I have a sore shoulder, I have a sore whatever.
Yeah.
What happened lead up to that? Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the management of my diabetes is as well. I have this mindset. So if my sugar level is high, how is that? Oh, I didn't take enough insulin for that, or I didn't work hard enough, or I was stressed. Right. So there's always there's a cause and effect. Mm-hmm. And I've married that off to how my body works in yoga, right, and how the awareness and how your mind can affect your body and your diabetes control. And this is not just for me. This is for everyone. Sure. Everyone has a stressful life. They're busy lives. They're always on the constant go, doing the next thing. So they're always kind of moving forward. But when you kind of stop for a little bit, and that can be really hard as well, just sitting still, mm-hmm, to understand. So, how did I get to this point? How's my life kind of turned out this way? How have I got diabetes? Why is life throwing me this kind of card which I can't handle? It's not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. It's a big lifestyle change, and I know, Rob, that you developed it in your mid-30s. Sometimes that can be quite difficult because you've already led the lifestyle without it. Yep. And then there's people that live it, with it. Mm-hmm. But life still goes on. You're still living a full life. You just have to do something slightly different. But with management of exercise, and the same when when you had your dinner there, when you were first diagnosed, yeah, your sugar level was 8, and then you took it was then 20. Yeah. You knew automatically as soon as oh yeah, I think I have diabetes. So you knew the cause because you ate your dinner. Yeah. And that was the effect. Yeah. Yoga is very similar, and trying to stop repetitive injuries and trying to understand how the body moves without going into the medical technical stuff, just to embody, just to feel right, that doesn't feel right to me. What's going on? So you kind of move things a little bit, just like you would do with your diabetes. If your sugar level is a little bit low or a little bit high, you move things, you change your dose, you change your eating habits. Mm-hmm. It's exactly the same in my eyes.
It's a kind of a nice comparison between the two. And I suppose, were you doing that, or did that happen consciously? Did yoga come along and then you could start seeing, well, I manage my body through yoga, I manage my diabetes through the management, that there's kind of a comparison or a parallel between the two? Did you kind of that consciously happen?
It happened organically. It didn't, it was just, I think the way I managed my diabetes when I was younger, into my early 20s, sorry. It was seamless. It just, that management was, was very easy for me to try and do. And I still do to this day. Right.
It's like you develop a system almost for one thing, and it can be applied to the yoga or to others, maybe.
Yeah, it's like anything. It's like, it's like any kind of muscle that you exercise. It gets easier when you use it. It's very similar when you start to learn how to drive. Mm-hmm. It's very daunting at the very beginning, just as it is, you're trying to learn everything for your diabetes. Right, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. But when you start learning how to drive, it becomes subconscious that you just do it. You don't think about it. And that's how, your diabetes, you just do it. You don't think about it. You just have to do it. But you don't let it get you down. And then with the yoga, I would practice, and I would practice quite a lot, and I do lots of upper body and lower body work to try and make sure that everything is kind of even though there will be days where my sugar level is just high and I just can't do it. I will do something. It's not a case that I won't do anything. I will do it, but I'll change it, because every day is completely different. It's not like I'm going to do a 5K run today, and tomorrow I'll do a 10K run. But your sugar level is very different each day, that you'll have to adapt it. Oh, I might only just do 3, or I might just do a conversational walk, but I'm still doing something.
Yeah, it's interesting. I for January, I'm doing a 5K every day kind of challenge for myself, and we get on to kind of the in yoga and kind of back exercises, I'll probably pick your brain on some of that. But
yeah, sure.
Today, even some days I do the 5K, check my bloods beforehand. They're 7 or 8 or whatever. I come back and they've gone down a little bit today, and some days they go up. It's kind of random in some ways. Like today, I went for the 5K before we talked. They were like 7.5 before I went. Came back, they were about 12, and it can be, just not every day is the same. And I think the important message is that don't take anything for granted. I suppose always check them and keep on top, because my biggest fear sometimes is I'm on the motorway from driving from Cork to Dublin, and I've checked the bloods and they're fine before I go, and then they go down and I don't have my whatever Dextro energy tablets or Lucozade sweets or whatever close by. So it's very important to always have something close by and not always predict with huge comfort that it's going to be like what it's going to be,
Yeah. I'm called a sugar lady.
Okay.
Because my glove compartment is full of sugar.
Yeah.
For reasons. So I have
Absolutely.
my jelly babies, I have my fruit pastilles. I've just loads of sugar, because there's no point keeping chocolate in the car, because it's just pointless. At this time of year, it's fine. Summertime,
Yeah.
So I always have sugar in the car. And I used to drink the Lucozade when I was younger, but I know now they've changed the glucose quantity and level. So I stopped drinking the Lucozade years before they did many changes. I would just eat sugar, and then I would have water or a fruit juice and water, because it was affecting my teeth.
Right.
So I had to try and just try and rinse that out of my mouth, and then just make sure that my sugar level I feel fine when I'm driving. But yeah, my sugar is just, my glove compartment is just full of sweets for medicinal reasons.
Of course, yeah. I sometimes when I do get a bit of a hypo, it's kind of an excuse to just eat loads of jelly babies for a few minutes, which is kind of a little treat in a strange sort of way, but I don't bring it on purpose, I swear. So maybe just talk about, I was reading a little bit about you, and I know it was around 2011, I think, when you were working, and a bit of a shocker on your job, and I suppose in parallel you were developing your yoga practice. Maybe talk a little bit about that and how, I suppose, yoga became a business rather than just a hobby.
Yeah, I was back in 2011. I was practicing yoga for about 5 years. So it was a hobby, and I was doing it, 3-4 times a week. I lost a lot of weight, and I've maintained an awful lot of muscle mass, and I was still lean, and my sugar levels were all fine. So it was a nice kind of mix to incorporate into my life. Then 2008 happened, so everything contracted. Everything was, there was redundancies everywhere. There's people losing their jobs all over the place. So the business that I was working for was not immune. So that was extremely stressful. And my job was, there was 3 of us on the team, and we were going to be reduced down to 2. So I had to fight for my job. So my colleagues became my competition.
Not nice.
And that dynamic was very hard, because we had, there was great banter with the 3 of us.
Yeah.
And because there was 3 of us, I was the only girl. So I had a little bit more of a fight to say, look, this is my job. I want this job. I've been doing this for the last 13 years. I just had to create this self-belief that this job is mine.
Right.
This job is mine. Thankfully, that little kind of fight within me did save me. But redundancies came around again. I said, look, I can't go through this again. This is just, and this is all I knew. I didn't know anything else. So my mum is a life coach.
Okay.
My husband is huge support through all of this. So my mom's, she kind of looked, and I was in a state kind of going, I can't go through this all again. How is this happening? Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to my department? And then she said, look, it's not that bad, Emma. Look at what you've done over the years, and look what you're currently doing. Why don't you turn a hobby into a career? Because you've done the groundwork, you've done the foundation work, you have that, and just build on it. And it was just then in 2011. So the first redundancy happened in 2008, and then in 2010, yoga teacher training course just literally appeared. It's like as if it just landed on my, I won't say I landed on my lap, it landed on my machine, on my laptop.
Yeah.
At that point, kind of going, right, there it is. The universe is giving you a sign, do it. And I did. And I qualified then in 2011. And I started teaching because I knew that I always wanted to be a teacher. I was a teacher in different guises. So I knew that if yoga can help me manage my diabetes, even without telling people that I'm diabetic, if it just helps them in a tiny little way, I know I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
So they can understand how they embody, how they fit within their body. I know I have a few people that are actually not very many people that are diabetics in my class. Some of them are type 2, very few are type 1.
Right.
So we're still a minority, which is not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. But other people just don't want to mention it, and I don't pick up on that. If they don't want to mention it, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
But my teaching does come from my the care I have for my diabetes. That's the way I share it.
Very good. So there's the different types of yoga. I guess from my own perspective, I've tried it a few times, and actually I think for one of the things I plan to challenge myself for in next month maybe, or March, is to try a bit more. Certainly try Bikram. I know that there's only one or two places down here that do that. You do different types. Maybe talk through different ones and maybe the benefits of each, or is there similar benefits across all of the ones?
Yoga is yoga. You're going to get the benefits regardless of what style of yoga that you do. The Bikram is a specific hot yoga that's taught by Chaudhry Bikram. It has to be in a 40-degree room, and you have to do this specific sequence that is shared with Bikram, and you have to be trained by Bikram,
right?
Or somebody that's I don't know if they call them disciples. Anyway, from the graduates of the Bikram school, where other schools of yoga are not as strict. So there's Hatha yoga, which is a very slow yoga. You're using your breath quite a lot. You're holding the poses maybe, for about 30 seconds, and then you move, and then you can create a flow. Then there's a yin yoga. That's an extremely long class because you're holding the poses. And you can probably do about 4 or 5 poses in an hour or an hour and a quarter class. That's it. Because you're holding them for so long.
Okay.
And that's to try and get the body to open the ligaments in the hips and the shoulders and the back. And that's how an awful lot of existing yoga practitioners would do yin yoga, because if they find that their body just can't open in a specific pose because the ligaments are just not opening for them, they can do a yin yoga where you're hanging out in one pose for what feels like a fortnight, but you're actually in it for about 3 to 4 minutes on either side.
Okay. And
that helps the ligaments to open. Like, I mean, I struggle with splits, like not box splits, one leg forward, one leg back.
Right.
I could do it on the right side, but can't do it on the left. So I would do yin yoga in order to try and work on my left side and hold it longer on the left to let the ligaments open more, so they can try and get equal to the right.
Okay, no, that's interesting. I haven't heard of that one before.
With Bikram, because you're already in the heat, your body's already limber.
Okay.
Your body's already open. So it's not like, you're just super bendy when you're in the heat. Your body is going to stop you. There is going to be a resistance somewhere that your body's kind of going, not ready. And it'll give you that sign, but you don't want the ego to say, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. Somebody else is doing their standing splits, one leg on the floor, one leg in the air, and they're bending down towards their hand, towards their standing leg. And you're kind of going, geez, I can't even get one leg straight. But it is a nice practice, but you have to let the ego stay quiet and let your body open. And guys love Bikram yoga. It's more of a kind of a male thing,
right,
for Bikram than any of the other styles of yoga. Even though all styles of yoga started by men, for boys,
right.
in India.
In India, yeah. I interviewed a guy last year, and he had spent some time in India and did a lot of yoga over there. And I think there's a minister for yoga in India, isn't there? There's like on the government.
There is, yes, a government minister, yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll get Leo to bring somebody on. Or you could put your name in the hat there.
Sure, yeah. Anything is possible at this stage.
Just on that though, and again, selfishly here, but maybe for anyone else with diabetes that wants to do yoga, but would Bikram be more risky for somebody with type 1 because of the heat, and would that have an impact on sugars coming down faster, do you think?
It will, yeah. Afterwards, when I was doing, I've done Bikram as a student, but I have shared yoga, hot yoga. So
right,
because I haven't been trained, or I don't practice the Bikram style, so okay. I don't call it Bikram. I just call it hot yoga. It's just yoga in a hot room. So the other style of yoga that I've done is, or I still do, is Ashtanga. Ashtanga comes from a place, and this is an actual place in India called Mysore.
Okay.
Yes. So Padabi Joyce formulated this style of yoga, and it's a set sequence that you do all the time, and he does it in different series. An awful lot of people here would do the primary series, because that's the more popular one, and then as you progress you can go into the second series, third series. There are up to 6 series, and not many people go up to the 6. There are very, very few people. So loads of people do the primary and probably stay there. Lots of people then will go into the second series, and then the drop off is the getting into third and fourth, and then the numbers start to dwindle significantly, and then trying to get into the fifth, and then trying to get into the 6th. Your life has to be dedicated to yoga and nothing else, because in 6 series of Ashtanga yoga, you're doing it for practically 3.5 hours.
A session.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So it's a full on kind of thing. So when you're in India, if you want to do all the series, you can do it there. Now I do teach Ashtanga. I've never been to India, but I have trained and I've practiced, and I am certified to teach Ashtanga yoga. So it's not that the person that taught me trained with Padabi Joyce, and he's been practiced it for 40 years. So he was doing it in his 20s, and he travels around the world to qualify people to share, so the message gets out there. So I was lucky enough to get my training here in Ireland for that, and then my teacher training was Hatha. Again, there's no rules to that, but you still have to stay with the Ashtanga, or sorry, not the Ashtanga, the yoga principles. It always goes down to the yoga principles. No matter what kind of style of yoga, it always comes back down to the fundamentals of the yoga practice, and that gets into the philosophy of it. Now that could be a whole different discussion, so I won't. I'm just kind of tapping on that door.
Yeah. So
there is a strong kind of philosophy with yoga, which was devised 4,000 years ago, and it's still very relevant to today. But yeah, I'll leave that one there for now.
We can come back to that one another time, on another episode maybe.
Exactly.
We go a deep dive in that. And I'm fascinated by the correlation or the meditative aspects of yoga. Or is that a principle of it? Or where does meditation fit into the kind of overall framework?
Think about meditation, right? You're sitting still and you're breathing, okay?
Yeah.
Now you can have music if that is your want. You can sit in silence and you can listen to your breath. Yoga is a moving meditation. So every move that you make, you inhale and you exhale, but you're creating movement in that as well. Mm-hmm. And when you take when you get a shock, you take this huge breath in. Yeah. And then as soon as you sigh, you go, you breathe out, because there's a release. And that's what yoga is. You're taking not the sharp inhale, but the slow inhale and the slow exhale. And that quietens down the traffic in the mind. That reduces the adrenaline, because adrenaline is, getting back to the diabetes, is insulin resistant. That's your fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want the adrenaline to increase, because what you said, sometimes you go out for a run, it'll be 7, come back and it'll be 13, because your mindset is active. And subconsciously adrenaline, your body still thinks it's in danger. So it produces adrenaline, and there was no insulin to counteract that. So in yoga, that can still happen in yoga. There's sometimes my sugar level would be, like I said, it'll be 7 when I go in and it'll be 13 when I come out, even though I've done loads of move. But once you actually try and get to the breath and just move with your breath, inhale, lift your arms up, exhale, bring the arms down. That's when the mind and the body start to talk to each other. And that's where yoga means union. So when the mind and the body are in harmony with each other, that your mind is not triggering anything that it doesn't need to. Anxiety or thoughts, you think that you're in danger, so you need to protect yourself. When in this day and age, anxiety is just thoughts. You're thinking of something that hasn't even happened yet, or you're trying to fix something that's in the past that you have no control over. And that's when anxiety comes. Meditation keeps you here, because that's all that matters, is just this moment now, as we're here, as we're listening, as we're talking. Because what's happened is finished.
Yeah.
And what's in the future hasn't happened yet. So we have this element of control. And yoga just tries to keep you in that moment. Anything that's external to that will happen organically in the future without any force. We always like force outcomes. I have to do this because this is going to happen. I'm going to do it. I'm preventing this because I have to do this to prevent that. So you're constantly in the future and you're not in the present moment. Now that's really hard, even just for me, because I've been practicing yoga for 14 years. Your mind will take over. The ego will catch you in very sneaky ways to try and create these scenarios in your mind. But once you kind of bring it back just to now, just sitting in the car, if you're sitting in the car, even listening to this, and you're looking at the red light, just notice the color of the red. Notice the color of the brake lights of the car in front of you, because that's all that matters.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all that matters. It's just your awareness of where you are. And if you're thinking, come on, turn green, come on, your thoughts are in the future.
Yeah.
You've gone way ahead. So that's where yoga brings the mind quiet and brings the body into stillness, or in yoga, it brings you into movement.
No, that's very true. I talk a good bit about meditation on this show, and every guest last season, well, not everyone, but a lot of them have some sort of practice or a habit that they're developing. I have my own. I actually wrote just an article recently about mindful triggers, and I use a hand dryer at work to kind of bring me back into the moment. But I also mentioned the red light as well. It's funny because they're there and they're all around us, but we're just so kind of caught up in our heads. Do you have a separate kind of meditation practice that you do outside of your yoga practice for yourself, even? Or?
I do, yeah. I need guidance, because my mind does go wandering. So I need to kind of bring it in. So I use an app on my phone,
right,
called Calm. There's other apps out there. I know Headspace is a very popular one. I used that before. So this one kind of works well with me, because there's different kinds of styles of yoga. There's, not styles of yoga, styles of meditation, days for breathing, days of calm, to get restful sleep. So I do the ones for staying calm, and I do suffer from anxiety. So I need to kind of rein that in and just sit and just listen. Again, it's always connecting with the breath. It's always, always, always connecting. So that's what I do. And then I do my yoga practice. I can't sit still. Nobody can actually sit still, because we were all born to move anyway. So I need to move all the time. So I find my meditation in my yoga practice, actually sitting still, I find really hard. So I need help with that. So that's why I use the app.
Okay, yeah, definitely. It's good to have an app or I use YouTube a good bit. There's so much there. It's just
there's so much out there. You are spoiled for choice.
Yeah.
But use everything. You just use what works.
Exactly.
For you, yeah.
Yeah. Sleep is kind of a question I like to ask as we're kind of moving through stuff, and just this probably is unique to me and talking to you around the diabetes. What I've noticed over the last few years, if I take too much insulin before I go to bed or my late evening meal, and I wake up, so like I love sleep, and but sometimes when I am gone low and the whole hypo scenario kicks in, for the first few times it happened to me, I'd wake up in the middle of the night or 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and with this, after having this most vivid, unbelievable dream that I could just not explain, and I remember the first couple of times it was like, what the hell was that? Like, and then a few seconds later I start feeling the tingling that as a type 1 you might get when you go below 4 if you have good sensitivity, and I says, shit, I need to take some jellies here. And after a few times this happened over a couple of years, then I started linking them together. So now when I wake up after that mad dream, I just know instantly I'm gone a bit lower, close to it. So the body is an amazing thing, the way it can actually create that in your mind and tell you, wake up and get some sugar into you. But it does kind of disrupt the sleep part. One, I suppose, do you get similar stuff if you ever go low? And two, what's your kind of sleeping patterns like?
Yeah, look, I'm the same. I hate disruptive sleep. I have to sleep continuously in order for my day to be functional. If there's any kind of disruption, I have to if there's any kind of triggers or something like that, that I'm not to shout at anyone, kind of go, no, Emma, that's not their fault, that's yours. Be quiet. So I need my sleep as well. But because of my control being so tight, it got to a point where I was hypo unaware. Right. I didn't know that I was going low, so I would take my sugar level would get so low that I would take what looks like an epileptic fit, but I don't have epilepsy. My body was just in a constant state of shaking. That when I was living at home, my brother had to sit on me as the ambulance people were coming in to try and bring me to A&E to make sure that I was okay.
Right.
In latter times, I have become hypo-aware, but last summer, I had 3 months of nocturnal hypos.
Right.
And you're probably wondering, why did you suffer 3 months of nocturnal hypos? Because my background insulin, because we have two types of insulin. We have the short-acting, which acts, as you eat, and then you have to have something in the background that when that short acting runs out, insulin still has to work for you in the background in order for cell renewal, for muscle healing, blinking, breathing, all that kind of stuff. But my background insulin was working too quickly for me and wasn't working long enough for me. This was a 24-hour long-acting insulin. So I would take it at 7 o'clock in the evening. It would act and it would reduce my sugar level. So I would have to, I would eat, again, if I had a late class, I would eat about, 8 or 9:30 at night, which is very late to eat, but I need to eat to stop to try and get before the nocturnal hypo would strike. But sometimes I would miss that. And because you're asleep, I check my sugar level, it would be 7. That's fine. I'll leave it at 7. But at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I would just shake because my poor husband is kind of going, Emma, you need sugar. Hang on. I'll go get some orange juice for you or get some sugar. So he would have to get up for me to do it. And that happened for 3 months. But because the sugar level was falling during the night, I couldn't adjust it. I was stuck because I needed to keep I needed to keep my long acting as it was, because it was working for me for the first half of the day. But as it ran out around 4 o'clock, my sugar level would increase.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the maths of that one. But if I reduced the background insulin, would have stopped the nocturnal hypos marginally. But my sugar level would have went up into the 20s, mid-20s in the afternoon. Okay. So, and I couldn't take it then because then my routine would be completely off. Anyway, so the nocturnal hypos are not pleasant. And because you're completely asleep and completely unaware, My feet move.
Right.
It's like restless leg syndrome. Your
Oh,
legs
yeah,
just
yeah,
constantly
yeah.
move. And now I do actually wake up and then go, no, my legs are moving. I don't even have to take my blood sugar, although I do. I try not to have any. I don't want to look at any screens in the bedroom because that's what's going to keep me awake longer.
Yeah.
I just know if my feet are moving, so no, that's not right. So I'll just take sugar, and then I'll give it just a few more minutes until till I can actually lie still and not disturb my husband because he's probably still content at the time. And then I check it in the morning, and so it would be about 5. So I knew then my sugar level did go below 4 during the night.
Yeah. No, so that's interesting. It's kind of, I guess, the thing again that comes back up, no matter how well you manage it, no matter how on top of it is, you just can't get complacent and think you have it all figured out. You just keep
No,
checking
yeah, and that's the challenging thing. Like I said, like I control it rather than it control me. Like it'll always throw curveballs. It'll always do that, but you can't. You'll never be ahead of it. It'll always be in the background. It'll always be there just to try and catch it out. Not on purpose. It's just life and how your body works. But again, complacency, you can't be complacent. It's just not an option. And if you do, that's when everything's just going to slide, and then your wellness has just gone out the window.
Yeah.
You've let it win over you and let it consume you. Now, I'm not a competitive person in any way, shape, or form. It's not me that I'm winning against it. I'm not. I'm controlling it. I know it's there. It's never going to go away. I just need to kind of keep it in its small little box. You just if a little bit kind of pops out of the lid, that's fine. I know how to deal with that, and then just kind of work away with my own day, so it doesn't take over.
Understood. No, that's really interesting, Emma. Like I think there's probably lots more stuff we could go into around the diabetes, and that maybe when I put it out, and what would be great when we share it out in that kind of diabetic community, if people liked it and they had other questions, we could certainly maybe come back and talk more about that, because I don't think there's enough really out there probably about it, and there's lots of people that don't maybe talk about it. So that would be cool. Sure. Just to kind of wrap up on your own business, you're 6 days a week working with the yoga teaching at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah, I have classes. I have public classes, and I have private classes, and I have corporate classes. So I teach preschool, I teach teenagers, I teach adults, I teach pregnant women. So I have a huge spectrum, like a broad spectrum of people that I share yoga with. You don't have to be fit. If you just want to try and find how your body moves and just understand, and it can be. You can be in your 60s doing it, or you can be 4 years old. Everyone needs to understand or wants to understand how their body moves, and make it a little bit of fun. Because if we make it too serious, it's kind of going, oh no.
Yeah.
You just make it a little bit lighthearted.
Sure.
That makes it so much easier. And then once you kind of put a little bit of humor into it, you laugh, and that's when. All right, yeah, I get it. It's not that serious. It's not that kind of, I have to move this, and I have to do this, and I have to inhale here, and I have to breathe out here.
Yeah.
No, just go with what you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, why not? Why not put your own stamp on it? Because sometimes things are too rigid, and people follow other people too clinically. So, yeah, definitely make it fun.
And each day is different. Like, I always have a class plan mapped out myself. But more often than not, I don't stick to that. And the simple reason is, like, my practice is very different to other people's, people that I teach. So the first thing that I ask them when we're about to begin the class, what do you want to work on? Because it's their class, it's their yoga practice.
Yeah.
So I have to, it's not like I have to, I want to allow them to get the full benefit. I have a problem with my lower back, or my hips are really tight. Fine, let's work on that. Because the class plan that I have already set out has got most of the stuff anyway that they're asking for. Somebody might throw a curveball in and say, well, can we do handstands? I went, yeah, no problem. Can we do headstands? Yeah. Can we do back bends? Yeah. I'm always a little bit trepidatious about back bends. My back doesn't like back bends, but I'll still teach them. If there's anything that I cannot do, I will not teach. because that's when it gets into dangerous stuff. So if I can't do it in my own practice, I won't teach it.
Okay, it's a good rule to have. And I'm just comparing what you say there. So one of the things I do is coaching, life coaching, business coaching, similar to what you said your mum does.
Yeah.
Our kind of modus operandi or just focuses to be of service to our clients or people that come to help us. We're there to help them. And the parallel there with what you're saying is that you're there to be of service to your paying clients as well. So that's interesting. That's good to know. I'll have one last selfish question. My back, right? I have bulging discs, or had, and I got over that last year, thankfully, by doing a lot of physical work in the gym, deadlifting and whatnot. I know after this month, when I've 31 5Ks ran in a row, which probably isn't the best idea. And what's good, simple ones just for a back or lower disc back? Because that's something that a lot of people suffer from, especially taller people.
Big time, yeah. So it depends on where the disc has kind of slipped out. So you can say herniated, prolapse, slipped. There's different variations. Same thing. Mm-hmm. So it would depend on which side, if it's bulging on both sides or it's bulging on one side.
Right.
So you have to be very mindful, because the discs are very, very fragile. And if the bulge is so far, it's going to hit off a nerve, and you might feel pain going down into your
knee and
into your lower leg,
or
not your butt cheek and your leg.
Yeah.
So you have to be very mindful of that. Sometimes back bends, sometimes forward bends would be, the way when you stretch up in the morning, you arch your back.
Yeah.
Because again, when you arch your back, what you're doing is that you're squeezing the adrenal glands in order to try and get the adrenaline to open, and then you have the energy to get up, as well as glycogen.
Okay.
So sometimes back bends, just lifting the heart. If you're sitting still, so if you're just doing it now, just sitting, feet on the floor, just lift the chest up towards the ceiling. You're going to feel the lower back start to contract, because all the muscles are starting to pull down towards the sacrum, which is the lower back. And then when you press the belly button in, your abs are starting to support that. So it shouldn't cause too much pain, but you should feel the contraction. And then lower the chest and round the spine as if you're trying to bow your head towards your knees. Mm-hmm. So then you're getting the front of the spine and the back of the spine working. So you're doing back bends to lift the heart, and then you let the chest sink to round the body as if you're trying to bow your head towards your knees, and the shoulders round forwards. Mm. That pose is called a cat-cow.
Okay.
In the seated pose, you can do it on all fours.
Yeah.
Lateral bending side to side, I would question, because I'd need to understand where the disc is misplaced. So sometimes leaning to one side, say the good side, say if you're leaning over towards your left, so you're opening that space on that right hand side. But if the bulge is on the right and you're leaning towards that right side, it's going to constrict. So leaning over to one side would probably be better in order to try and open the disc space, but not into the bulge.
Okay. Definitely give me some insight. I was actually doing those little poses there while you were talking. Kind of, I've never done a yoga pose on a podcast before. Maybe there's a market in this.
Maybe
you never know.
But there's loads of factors. Like, I mean, I know with runners, the hip flexors, and that's part of the back muscle that leads in towards to lift the knee. So it does travel from the back to the front of the body. Runners, the hip flexors are always tight. That's what's going to pull in the lower back. Hamstrings, tight hamstrings, and they kind of create this tug of war effect in your lower back, that the hamstrings pull down. When you bend forwards, your back pulls up. So when the hamstrings are trying to pull down towards your knees, because that's what they're trying to do, they're trying to support the base of the body, and you're trying to bend forwards, and you can't touch your toes because your hamstrings are really tight. There's just going to be these arguments with your lower back muscles and your hamstrings. So bend the knees, so that creates the resistance from the hamstrings, and that allows the back muscles to stretch.
Okay, cool. And like just for an average runner or somebody that does a lot of road running and that is trying to get into yoga, once, twice, 3 times a week, what sort of would you recommend for
I would
frequency?
Start off once.
Just
start off once a week. That's all that you need. And when you're running, and I know some people, some runners do a warm up, which is like a gentle run.
Yeah.
And they might do a little bit of stretching of the Achilles and the calf muscles and leave the hamstrings out. But there's other stuff that goes on as well that needs opening. But again, I could do a whole class on that.
Sure.
It's just so you can try and get the muscle to respond. And there are poses that you can do that actually increases your stride.
Yeah.
It does actually make, your time that little bit faster. It might be only about 2 or 3, like 1 or 2 seconds, but in running, if you're competing, that's a huge increase. When you're doing a pace, and you have a companion that you want to kind of beat, or you're training with this person, what their strengths are. If you're hitting a hill, or if you're hitting a down slope, or you're hitting cross country, if you're road running or whatever.
Yeah.
The terrains where your speed is going to be different. So if you're running cross country or you're running on uneven terrains, your hip muscles and your leg muscles are going to act differently as they would do on the road, because the road is much easier. It's a much easier plane. So you have to understand what muscles that work in the harder terrain and how they're much easier in the easier terrain.
Fascinating stuff, Amanda. As I said, I think there's so much we could talk about, and it'd be great if we do maybe get back, and if we do get questions in, we could kind of address those in some sort of forum in the future. Time flies, Emma, when we're talking about stuff that is important, and certainly your journey and your life experience has been very interesting for me to hear this morning, especially from the diabetic perspective. So thanks for sharing that. Just to wrap up, people can get in touch with you through a few different mediums. Do you want to give a shout out how they can do that?
They can contact me through my website, which is yogawithemma.ie. I have a Facebook page. Just find the Facebook page Yoga with Emma. Or if you want the Facebook address, which is facebook.com/yoga with Emma. I'm on Twitter, which is a little bit more complicated, but it's at yoga_with_Emma. And I'm also on Instagram. So again, it's very simple, Yoga with Emma.
Okay. Yeah. It's hard to get the same name across all of them.
I try quite hard, so I was kind of lucky that way to try and get them. So
yeah, very good. Thanks so much. I hope you have a great rest of day, and I look forward to hearing some feedback for when we put this out.
Thanks a million, Rob. It was a pleasure.
How was that? Did you enjoy it? I hope so. If you did, please like, share, and do all that other good stuff that only takes a second on social media, but means an awful lot to me as it spreads the reach. You can get the details from the show in the show notes on the website robofthegreen.ie. In there you can share the show out with others. I really just want to touch on 3 other quick things. 1, feedback. I learned so much from it. Without it, I can't improve. Please give me a bit of feedback, positive, negative, constructive. Would you recommend a book? Do you have any other ideas for guests? How about more video? Let me know what you want and I can make it happen. I will try. That's number 1. Number 2, sharing is caring. This year I'm making more of an effort to try and expand the reach. Facebook, there's a page and there's a group. The 1% Better community on Facebook is where I really hope new listeners go to share ideas, comments, in general things that they could help others with. That's what it's there for. Follow me on Spreaker.com. That's the new host. I'm on Twitter, growing not exponentially at all, but slowly. So please follow there. I'm on Instagram. All of these are at Rob of the Green. LinkedIn, Rob O'Donoghue. Get in touch. Would love to hear from you. Number 3 is about support. So I'm offering a few hours a month, pro bono, free coaching to those that can't afford it, that need some coaching, that want some coaching. If you go to the website, the support page, click on the pro bono link. On the flip side of that, where you guys can support me, go to patreon.com, the Rob of the Green page. You can make a donation there. You can get access to exclusive content, which I'm adding all the time. That would be awesome. Anything you contribute will go back into the show to make it better, make it more than 1% better. Also, there's the option to buy one of those books that were recommended through the website, which will bring you to Amazon, which will get you the normal links, which will get you the books at the normal price, but supposedly Amazon will give the show a small donation every time a book is purchased, or anything for that matter, which is great. So finally, I just wanted to say thanks so much for listening. I know it's difficult to make improvements, to push things forward, to get outside your comfort zone. I'm trying to do it all the time. I hope that every listen and every show and every guest that is on gives you something to take away that you could apply, adopt and adapt into your own life to create a new habit, to make something better. Don't overreach. Small improvements, 1% is enough. And thank yourself for making the time to listen to the show. It shows you're interested in learning, improving and getting better, even if it's just 1% at a time. Have a great day and good luck.